Carl Jung had a Latin phrase inscribed above the door of his home in Switzerland, which in English means, "Whether called upon or not, God will be present." This early pioneer of psychoanalysis acknowledged the significance of spirituality in the growth and potential of individuals, but religion has often neglected the inverse relationship. This neglect is apparent within Christianity, where over-spiritualization and fear of science has left little room for psychological perspectives in human potential and growth. Welcome to my poster session on psychospirituality, the acceptance and integration of psychology in spiritual growth. This is me. My name is David Ahori. I'm a counseling psychology student at Yorkville University in Canada. I am also an ordained pastor and have been helping individuals in the context of the Christian Church for over 15 years. I have a Master's of Divinity degree from Carey Theological Seminary in Vancouver, BC. I am a husband and father of 6 and live in a small village called Cultivating in the beautiful Okanagan region of British Columbia, the traditional lands of the Syilx First Peoples. So before I get started, I just want to clarify that considering my area of education and lived experience, I'm presenting from a Christian spiritual perspective. And since this is a humanistic psychology conference, none of you are allowed to judge me for that, right? So counselors that share my faith will likely find value in this presentation. However, you don't need to share my faith to appreciate this session, because I'm offering a view into my world that will give insight to those that may counsel people who identify as Christian, kind of like a window into the Christian brain. So this information is helpful for psychotherapists who wish to understand why a Christian or other religious folk may be resistant to psychotherapy. So let's get to it. I love this image that is often used to represent psychology, because the gears are moving, the mind is spinning, and for the most part, therapists recognize that these gears are influenced not just by someone's personality, but also through biological and social factors. But a Christian brain looks slightly different, because although most clients trust that a therapist knows how the gears work and that they have the tools to fix and repair them, a Christian client believes the gears were designed, manufactured, and are powered by a higher power. One of the challenges that Christians face, both in seeking psychological help as a client and learning about psychology as a student, is that we have a historical resistance to science. There's a fear that has its roots in modernity, when science and religion had their falling out. And the reason I call this a fear is because in my experience, the main force that drives this opposition is that many Christians believe that science poses a risk to steering people away from belief in God and the Bible. And in psychology, we recognize this fear as a defensive reaction whenever people's deeply held beliefs are challenged. Therefore, anything that contradicts the Bible appears as a threat to the validity of the Bible. There is this common predominant Christian belief that the Bible has all the answers needed for living, that science may come in handy for explaining the small things like why the sky is blue, how bridges span canyons, or where to look when testing for diseases. But for the big things, like the meaning of life, or the genesis of life, or global warming, and other unexplainable phenomena, it's better to stick to answers that are found in the Bible. So this has led to a behavior that I've witnessed throughout my faith life, before and after becoming a pastor: over-spiritualization. When bad things happen, either the devil is trying to thwart your progress, or God is testing your faithfulness. If you are struggling with doing bad things or feeling bad things, you need to pray more, read the Bible more, and faithfully attend church. Today, the Christian church and other major world faiths actually are still resistant to psychology and contribute to the stigma that mental health either doesn't really exist, or if it does, then prefer to suggest in-house solutions. So I need to say this is all a major generalization, but it is pervasive enough to have fostered an unfortunate historical neglect of mental illness in the church. This neglect has begun to shift over the last 10 years, but a recent survey still found that a third of respondents had experienced the negative stigma of mental health in their current or past church. And the Barna Group reported in 2018 that Christians are half as likely to seek therapy than non-Christians. So I want to share a quick illustration of a challenge that you could run into when treating the Christian mind. Here's my mother, bless her heart. She's a wonderful woman, but she's a product of this fear of psychology. Her generation of Christians have been taught that meditation and mindfulness is Eastern religion and dangerous because it could let in evil spirits, but prayer is good. Like her generation, she is slowly coming around to see the benefits of mindfulness meditation, and although skeptical at first, she now strongly believes in the practice. Well, I asked her if I could share this story of a little while ago when our church introduced this Christian meditation practice that focuses on God, breathing, and stillness. It's based off of a verse in the Bible that says, "Be still and know that I am God." We've got the best of both worlds here, mindfulness and prayer in beautiful harmony. But when I asked my mom what she thought about it, she said, "Well, I believe in mindfulness and I believe in prayer. I just don't think they should go together." So, as therapists, how do we help Christianity and psychology make up? Well, by using an intervention from couples therapy, of course. In my opinion, and I'm not an expert counselor, I am still in training, in fact, but I don't think psychology and spirituality are mutually exclusive. We just need to uncover common ground. And when we focus on that, I think we can recognize their shared mission. For example, let's consider the concept of flourishing. At its core, therapy is all about helping someone flourish or reach their unique to them potential. Maslow and Rogers called this self-actualization. Before that, Jung called it self-realization, and Adler striving for superiority. So in psychology, we recognize that a functioning individual is one who is on a trajectory of becoming the best version of themselves. Therefore, our overall mission as therapists is to help people along on this trajectory. AHC says it this way on their website: "Humanistic counselors acknowledge the responsibility of human beings to create their own destiny and believe that within themselves people have the answers to improve their lives and the quality of life of all human beings." When we study Christianity, and I would argue some of the other major religions, we see the same core understanding and goal for the self. The Apostle Paul wrote in a letter to the early church in Philippi that "He who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion." And Jesus Christ is quoted in the Gospel according to John, "I have come that they may have life and have it to the full." In fact, if we really dig into the Christian concept of salvation, we learn that it is much less about being saved from sin and going to heaven when we die, and much more about our present life and setting it on a healthy trajectory of flourishing. In his highly influential book, Christian theologian N.T. Wright comments that we are not saved as souls, but as wholes. The Christian mind then recognizes that God is calling people to become whole, to become who they were meant to be, to experience life to its full potential, and this process is called salvation. But it doesn't end there. A full Christian understanding of salvation also recognizes a much bigger component. Jesus is often found in the biblical writings talking about the kingdom of God or the kingdom of heaven, but not the kind of kingdom that first comes to mind. He wasn't talking about dominion or knights and castles or conquering or monarchy or even heaven. He was talking about a social movement of truth, love, and justice that was at work setting things right here on earth. So the mission of Christianity is not only personal, but global. Historically, Christians have had epic failures when it comes to social justice, but it doesn't change that this remains the ultimate goal of Christianity. When Christians are saved, they are called to participate in making the world a better place for everyone to live in. Does this sound familiar? It should. The last part of AHC's statement reads, "People have the answers to improve their lives and the quality of life of all human beings." Something that I've appreciated in my training from Yorkville University is an emphasis on culturally responsive and socially just counseling. We can also see this shift in the code of ethics of counseling associations that makes social justice a foundational value of counseling. Recognizing this fifth force in psychology is recognizing the mission of counseling to not only acknowledge discrimination, oppression, and privilege, but to actively advocate for change. So if this works, if psychology and spirituality can work together, what does this look like in praxis? Well, let's consider this year's conference theme, growth through struggle, cultivating strength and resilience. What's really cool is that growth and resilience are actually highly spiritual concepts. In his book on integrative spiritual care and therapy, Van Katwijk describes growth as God's promise of restoration and fulfillment of the self, while resilience is essentially a spirituality of optimism, that no matter the obstacle, there is a way through. So let's say I had a Christian client present that is struggling with major depression. This devout Christian has essentially two compounding struggles. Psychologically, they are struggling with the symptoms of depression, so the feelings of hopelessness, the biological deficits, the self-defeating social behavior. But spiritually, my client is struggling with thinking they are a bad Christian, and in worst-case scenarios, their faith communities think it too. This is because they haven't found the answers in the Bible yet, or their prayers of deliverance are not being heard by God. So they are stuck, hopeless, and without the strength to move forward. As a therapist, to cultivate strength and resilience, to promote growth, both struggles need to be addressed. An integrative approach can handle both problems at once. This is because psychology and theology, if you know where to look, have similar responses to the same problems. For example, to develop emotional resilience, one of the ways is Gurmer and Neff's practice of mindfulness self-compassion, which has been shown to reduce depressive symptoms. One of its major concepts is recognizing our common humanity, the understanding that all humans make mistakes and go through struggles. Well, the Bible teaches the same thing. The Apostle Paul teaches the church in Corinth that no temptation has overtaken you except what is common to humankind. And God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. But when you are tempted, he will also provide a way out so that you can endure it. Another word for temptation is affliction. In a different letter, Paul teaches the believers in Rome to rejoice in suffering because suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope. The Apostle James, half-brother of Jesus, writes, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance." The problem that the church has had in helping people with depression is that it is heavy on theory, but light on empirically supported interventions. Don't get me wrong, I still think reading the Bible is good and prayer is helpful. But what if those are not the way out? This is why psychology can play a key role in not only helping someone overcome depression, but also experience spiritual growth. Psychology has the tools to operate on the mind, in the same way modern medicine has the tools to operate on the body. And when you think about it, very few Christians rely only on prayer to fix a faulty heart valve. I wish I could share more, but I hope at least you sense my passion for psychospirituality. I think as counselors, if we are aware of the historical tension between spirituality and psychology, we're in a better position to offer congruence and empathy to our Christian clients. Furthermore, I suggest that spirituality and psychology share the same ultimate goals. This makes them beautifully compatible and positions psychology to better support the emotional and spiritual struggles of our clients. Once again, I'm only a novice and yet to even begin my clinical therapy practice. Plus, not all theologians would fully agree with the perspective of Christianity I've presented here today. But I really appreciated this opportunity to present. My hope is that I have fostered a further curiosity for the integration of psychology in spiritual growth.